Brett Dolan is sort of a renaissance man of sports. He'll do play-by-play with anything you throw there in front of him. Volleyball, soccer, basketball, baseball. He's on Touchdown Radio's radio broadcast of most of their college football Saturdays. He had U 39, Cal 38 last weekend, which, man, that was a great capper on an outstanding Saturday of college football, Brett. I caught the last half of it. It was a great game.
It was wildly entertaining, and from 25 down, Miami came back to win. We were preparing for that to be, I think, the sixth team in the top 11 to lose. As it was 5, with USC being number 11 that lost, and it looked like Miami was going down to defeat. And Cam Ward, who basically did nothing in the first 2.5 quarters, cranked up the yardage. I think they had 4 touchdown drives in excess of 70 yards with a 2-point conversion mixed in to outscore Cal 29-3 to win the game. It was a great deal of fun, and it was a late night, I will say, even for those of us on the West Coast, but it did cap a very crazy college football Saturday.
Hey, real quick, is Cam Ward, is he good enough to play on Sundays? Kind of what was your overall evaluation of him as a college quarterback?
You know, Matt, I'd love to sit down and have about 2 or 3 beers with you and watch him play, because I think you'd have some insight. For me, he makes some big-time plays. He makes some big-time mistakes. He threw a pick-6 that he should have never thrown. But what's unique about him, and this is where I'd really love your insight, is because he does things differently. He will start drifting backwards, and he'll be 10 or 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he'll be moving to the sideline, and you're like, bro, we got to throw this ball, or we got to get rid of it. And he'll take a couple of sacks from time to time that he shouldn't because he doesn't throw the ball away. And then darn it if he doesn't complete a 20-yard pass sometimes when you're expecting him to throw it away or step out of bounds. So you do have to kind of ride the roller coaster a little bit with him. I will say, as much football as he's played, the kid's got some moxie. If you count his numbers, he's going to have an incarnate word, which was FCS. He's going to finish with about 19,000, maybe 20,000 passing yards. So the kid's played a lot of football, but he does make some big mistakes. But I would say Miami's kind of gotten by the skin of their teeth against 2 teams that are okay or good, but not great, in Virginia Tech and Cal. But he's not going to be tested a lot either the rest of the way, maybe other than Clemson, and possibly twice. So it's curious. I think he's probably the leader in the clubhouse. He's got an NFL future, but boy, he has some interesting decisions from time to time.
He's a worthy successor to the Miami quarterback lineage. Just thinking of all those great QBs that came through, though it's been a while since they had a quarterback of that caliber. But what's it like sitting next to Toretta when Miami is playing and they're losing and they're down big in the second half?
Yeah, he's pretty straightforward in general, and, you know, some of the mistakes Cam Ward made might kind of poke him a little bit more than normal, but he's pretty fair about it, too. I mean, he's got a great perspective when it comes to, you know, not only quarterback play, but Miami and whatnot, but it did add an element because, you know, he's from that area, and Cal passed him up and went to Miami, and it's kind of his 2 worlds colliding in a Seinfeld episode, and then, you know, then the other bizarre part, Phil, this is an Atlantic Coast Conference game, and when I turn around, I swear I've got the best view ever of the Pacific Coast behind me. So it was just bizarre all the way around. But, you know, he likes Cam Ward. He likes his arm strength, but I think like everybody else, wondering if one of those bad decisions might cost them a game at some point.
Man, college football is just heating up. I know you get Penn State and USC. I want to ask you about another game going on in that conference, and that's Ohio State, Oregon. I mean, just how big of a game that is. And I'm going to lean Ohio State. I don't know exactly, I should know this, where this game is being played, but I'm going to lean Ohio State. What are your thoughts on this Ohio State-Oregon matchup?
I think I'm going to do the same thing, Matt. I will say it's in Eugene, and these are 2 teams that probably by wins and losses deserve their rankings, but they've both been a little bit underwhelming in the sense that Oregon had some wins this year where they probably, you felt like going in, could win this game by 20, 25 points and didn't, and had to kind of escape. And Ohio State's got the best talent that anybody can buy. I mean, they spend as much money as anybody to accumulate talent, to encourage kids to skip the NFL for one more year and come back and maybe beat Michigan and go deep in the playoffs. But they've been a little bit underwhelming, too, and I can't quite figure out why, because the talent is there. I'm not sure yet about Oregon. I would say if Ohio State wants to make that statement that they've been spending their money to do so, this would be the time to do it. we're in this weird week of these teams going cross-country, and Miami going to Cal, and Penn State going to USC, and Ohio State going to Eugene, and you're talking about 2 or 3 time zones difference and all the uniqueness that comes with that. Having said that, if you have big boy aspirations like Ohio State does, this would feel like a game that they would really want to come out victorious on Saturday in Oregon.
So this Penn State-Southern California game really is the one that kind of shows why some of this cross-country travel is such an issue. You wouldn't deal with it all that much with Miami and Cal. These are in big cities. They got major airports. They got the runways that can handle the planes that they need. But James Franklin was talking earlier in the week about what Penn State has to do in order to travel from State College, which is a big college town but still doesn't have a major airport, and go all the way out to Los Angeles. They have to take a bus about an hour and a half to Harrisburg, and then they can fly all the way to Southern California. They got to travel today for a game on Saturday.
That's right.
It's craziness. It's almost like, what was the NFL team that stayed in West Virginia in order to play 2 games on the East Coast recently? But those are pros. I mean, this just sounds weird.
It does, and I'm glad you brought that up because James Franklin was talking about it, and I think he wanted somebody to ask him at his press conference because they're trying to get a freaking runway in College Station to be able to handle the planes the size they need to fly cross-country. So they're leaving today after a bus ride and a cross-country trip. Last week from Miami, when you consider this, they also went on Thursday, and while it was 2 major markets, Miami to Cal, by the time the game got over, it was about 2:45 a.m. body time. So, you practice in the morning like Miami does, and you're playing a football game, and you're like, my goodness, it feels like it's 2:30 in the morning. Well, it is because of the time change. I think UCLA played at Penn State last week, and they played an early game at noon. So for them, the game started at 9 a.m. body time. They were probably home for dinner by the time they flew back across the country and gained 3 hours. But it's another reminder that if we're not broken, we're edging in that direction when these teams can't figure out even how to get one place to another in conference games.
Brett, I want to ask you a little bit about the Cinderella story we got going on with Pittsburgh, Indiana, Iowa State, BYU. When is midnight? When does the bell ring? When do they turn back into a pumpkin? Are you buying in to any of these teams that are undefeated right now?
Long-term, no. For the great story, yes. I mean, Iowa State's a pretty good defensive team. I think they could lose at West Virginia this week. Indiana, it's hard to know. I give them credit. Even when you're playing teams that you're as good against or even better, you still got to win the games, and they've done that. BYU's had some good wins. I mean, maybe they're one of the better teams in that Big 12 right now. But you're right, Matt. Those are some great stories, and I think college football kind of loses them amongst some of the big dogs that we talk about on a regular basis. I give them credit for winning games. I don't think if you threw any of those teams out there against a top 4 or top 5 team in the country that they could hold serve, so to speak, but it doesn't mean that they can't find a way to win 9 or 10 games and kind of change the trajectory of some of those programs.
The Indiana thing, I have a lot of trouble jibing winning football with Indiana. As a former student from that school, I was there 2 years, and the first year is like, we started 4-0, we're ranked 25th in the country. By the end of the season, they didn't even make a bowl game. It's like Kurt Cignetti deserves quite a lot of praise just for the start of how he's done at Indiana, because no one's ever confused Bloomington with a great college football town.
No, but Phil, I need to go back and check this. I was reading an article, and I got it poked away someplace about the age of college football. I'm not so sure they don't have double-digit numbers of guys that are either sixth-year players or older. I mean, you're talking about if you can't go out and get kids to take $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 or more, can you go find a good 23-year-old who wants to play big boy football for a year if he's been at the FCS level? He's had some injury problems. You're talking about a roster where maybe a fifth is older than some of the NFL teams that are really loading up on players out of the draft. So if you have 13, 14 guys that are sixth-year seniors, you ought to be able to beat some of the teams on your schedule if you start with a weaker schedule and play the big boys later on in the Big Ten. So credit for them for doing so, but it's another weird aspect of where we are right now in this world of college football that wouldn't have made sense just 4 or 5 years ago.
I guess maybe we bring it up next week, but you got the Arkansas LSU game. But that also means, it doesn't sound like you ever miss many games, Brett, because you got opinions on everybody we ask you about. But LSU Ole Miss, I think that's going to be the best game of the weekend in college football.
Could be. I'm really intrigued by Ohio State and Oregon, and obviously Texas and OU play with Ewers coming back, and even Kansas State, Colorado, I think might be kind of a fascinating game. But I am really curious to see how LSU or Ole Miss handles this game, because it does feel like the loser gets relegated down a level in our tier of interest. Because Ole Miss, we kind of assume they were a top 10 team. If they lose again, they're probably not done losing, and they're not getting in the playoff. And LSU would love to have that game with USC back at the beginning of the year in Las Vegas, but it does feel like for them to be amongst the Georgias and Alabamas and Tennessees and whatnot, they need to win this game. There could be another loss or so coming for Brian Kelly's team. So I don't say it's an elimination game in this new world where 2 losses doesn't necessarily kick you out, and maybe 3 won't either. But it does feel like the loser of this game is kind of relegated in our minds, so to speak, and not really being a true significant player in the SEC.
Los Angeles is a big city, Brett, but who knows? Maybe at the Coliseum you can track down Muss and shake his hand and say hi to him.
I have no doubt whatsoever. I'm almost 95% confident I'll see Muss somewhere before the game on Saturday on the field.
Well, I hope you have a good call. We'll look forward to it and look forward to next week. LSU at Arkansas, Touchdown Radio as well.
Enjoy the bye week, guys.
Thanks, Brett.
Brett Dolan, play-by-play Touchdown Radio. Of course, you can hear him on Razorback Sports, baseball, basketball, softball, just about everything else going on.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.